Hello everybody, welcome into Scores, Goals, and Touchdowns with Mr. Pat. I'm Mr. Pat, joining us again for the second week in a row, LC Gagan.
Hey.
Now, this was kind of the biggest thing that was going on is the finals week, and really everything else in sports takes a back burner. Now, and also you may notice we don't have a goofy background. Figured today's going to be the last nice Sunday where it's not scorchingly hot, so we thought we'd play outside for this week.
Yes, the natures and all.
Yes. Now, the NBA Finals, it was a rematch of the 2006 Finals. Miami beat Dallas 4-2. Afterwards, it caused Dwayne Wade to question Dirk's leadership, is why they lost. Now, this series, Dirk answered that in a big way. He shot 49%, and he averaged almost 28 points a game. Now, you watch the Finals, and you notice who the leader was on both teams. You know, Dirk was just far and away the best player on the floor at all times, except for maybe a little bit in 7, but I digress. Now, the series, the big thing was Dirk's heroics. He had a torn tendon one game. Very next one comes out as the game-winning layup. And the next one after that, he has a 102-degree fever, comes out, hits the game-winning layup again. Now, earlier in the show, one of the first few ones, we mentioned Dirk's legacy. You say he stamped it with this finals.
He really has cemented his legacy with this NBA championship. He's been an all-star, he's been a league MVP, now he's a finals MVP and an NBA champion. He's really cemented himself that he is one of the best players in the game right now. He's probably one of the top power forwards of all time. He's probably one of the best European players of all time. So, I mean, this is really a validation for a 13-year career thus far to make him one of the best players in the league.
I definitely agree with that. Now, like I said, I'm a big fan of Dirk. I like the Mavs. Huge fan of Mark Cuban, which I will get into later.
He's the man.
Oh, yeah. Now, I'm going to be honest, as much as I like the Mavs, I'm happier that LeBron lost. It really wouldn't matter which team it was. I'd cheer for them wholeheartedly. How about you? What are you happier for?
I am happy that, you know, Mark Cuban got an NBA championship. I'm happy for Dirk because, I mean, he's paid his dues for 13 years and finally got a ring. But like you, I've despised LeBron since day one. I've hated the man since 2003.
Pistons fan.
Big Pistons fan. And I've hated him, and when his whole decision thing made me hate him even more, and with them parading around acting like they'd already won a title, and for Dirk and them to shut them up in a big way, especially by destroying them on their own home court in a clinching game. I mean, I could not be happier to see LeBron fail and walk out with with his tail between his legs, like we saw in Game 6. Awesome moment for the Mavs, and an awesome moment for every Cleveland fan, which I'm not one of, but an excellent moment for them to see LeBron get his comeuppance.
Now, have you ever witnessed something? I thought it was funny, where just one team was so nationally despised by everyone. Nobody wanted the Heat to win except for the people of Miami. How about you? Have you ever seen anything like that?
I mean, the only other basketball team I can think of that would have generated that much hatred probably was the bad boy Pistons back in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, everyone hated the way they played, how they acted, but they were that good that they could do that. And, you know, they didn't care what anyone thought about them. I mean, in other sports, the only one that really comes to mind is the Yankees, because they're the team that goes out and buys whatever they want. But no team, I think, has generated as much public hate as the Miami Heat did this year with the way they brought themselves together and how they conducted themselves. That's really how, you know, they grew to be the most hated team in the last probably 20 years.
And the other things they did, they had the whole off-season crap, like you mentioned. LeBron did his decision. Now, they're just smacked of arrogance. Cleveland, they've suffered through the drive, they've suffered through the fumble. In basketball, they've suffered through the shot. For him to call that decision, knowing he was going to go to Miami, that really put me off. And then right after it, all three of them are posing. LeBron starts talking about his 7 championships, not 1, not 2, not 3, blah, blah, blah.
Go with Tyson Chandler.
Yeah. And then during the series, they posed too long in front of the Heat bench after hitting a 3.
The Mavs bench.
Yeah, that's what I meant, the Mavs bench. And then, just ridiculous, mocking Dirk for his fever. I mean, understand maybe if you beat him, but he beat you with that 102-degree fever. Why are you going to taunt him? Now, my question is this just a bunch of guys being young and stupid, or are they really that immature?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I'm leaning more, after seeing all that, I'm leaning more towards the immature side. I mean, show some class after you got beat. And on top of that, you mock the guy when he beat you.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, especially if you have cameras in front of you all the time, why would you do something so stupid that you basically just gave bulletin board material to the Mavericks, who apparently someone said on their flight after that game, they were pissed.
Oh, yeah.
That they made fun of Dirk and things like that. And Jason Kidd said, "This is our time," to Dirk and to Tyson Chandler, and it was their time. And you know, LeBron's got to learn at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't ever want him to see him win a title, but he's got to learn at some point
Yeah.
that you've got to shut your mouth and you've got to take the high road, or else everyone's just going to continue to hate you for the
Yeah.
rest of your career.
Now, speaking of LeBron, what happened to him? I mean, the big three got together. Everybody thought Chris Bosh would be an afterthought. But just see him standing around and not wanting the ball in Game 6, that blew my mind. Chris Bosh was actually, he showed up for this series. What happened to LeBron?
It's having the same thing last year where he gets, for some reason, in the fourth quarter, he gets extremely passive. I don't know why, but he just stands out in the three-point arc. I mean, he had a couple of wide-open shots and dished the ball off to someone else. And he could have driven to the hole, done other things with the ball, posted people up, and he passed out of it. I don't know what. There's no killer instinct with him. Dwayne Wade has that killer instinct.
Oh, yeah.
Nowitzki has that killer instinct. And the guy that they compared LeBron to the most, Michael Jordan, he was the epitome of killer
Oh, yeah.
instinct. Because
Oh, yeah.
when he needed to, he put the Bulls on his back. LeBron almost refuses to put the Heat on his back because he doesn't want to take the spotlight away from Dwayne Wade, whose team it is. It's Dwayne Wade's team.
Yeah. Really quick before we wrap this up, we all know LeBron screwed Cleveland. There's no way around it. Now, Cleveland, they got their year of Schadenfreude. They lost, humiliated. Is it time that Cleveland moves on?
I mean, I think they can have some closure to this, that LeBron didn't win a title, but he is forever the most hated athlete in the history of Cleveland sports. So, I mean, they're going to root against him forever.
But we're still witness to 0 championships. We're going to come back and talk about the Stanley Cup Finals. See you then. Welcome back. Scores, goals, and touchdowns. Rooster Pat, LC, joining us for the second half again. Now, the NBA Finals, what we talked about, extremely entertaining. But just as entertaining, maybe a bit more, we had the Stanley Cup Finals. We had Vancouver versus Boston. Went 7 games. Just incredible, amazing. It was just running out of adjective to describe how great that series was, outside of a few games in Boston. But I digress. Boston. Yeah, this is Boston Bruins' first Stanley Cup Finals in 39 years. People of Boston are still celebrating about it. Now, when we first did the show, Arnold, so close, I thought I'd give him a shout out. He predicted the first show it would be Boston versus Vancouver, and he said Vancouver win in 7 games. He was really close. He just got it flipped. It ended up being Boston winning in 7.
Story of Arden's life. So close.
Now, I knew you had, who was your team? Who were your finals?
I had Boston getting to the finals, but I had them losing to the Red Wings because no one else in our pool that we were going with was picking the Wings. So I had the Wings beating Boston in 6, but I had them going to the finals. So I would like to say I was the only other person to have Boston going to the finals.
All right. Now, with Vancouver losing, Canada still hasn't won a Stanley Cup final since 1993. Do you think that's a worthwhile stat, or just kind of a...
I think it's interesting for Canadians. I mean, I think that it kind of bugs them a little bit that one of their teams can't win a Stanley Cup, and they've come close over the last 10 years. They've had teams get there and not finish the deal. I think had they not won the gold medal in the Olympics last year, I think this would be a much harder loss for them to absorb. Because Sidney Crosby winning it for them on home ice was about as much as they could ever ask for. But I mean, I think a little bit. I think it just eats at them a little bit. Their national sport, no team in their country can beat an American team.
Well, you say a little bit. I mean, the people of Vancouver are probably still rioting over that loss.
Yeah, they all strolled up there from Columbus.
Yeah. I never understood rioting. I mean, if you win or lose, why just break everything? Why not just celebrate? Go out, have a few drinks, or a lot of drinks. But I mean, even if you're going to go with the tradition, usually you riot after you win. I mean, not so much that you lose. Isn't that how it goes?
I mean, generally you see people a lot more excited when you win because, I mean, you see people like in the streets. I mean, I was up in Detroit when the Red Wings won for a bunch of their cups, and I mean, it was just people being happy. I mean, everyone was thrilled. I mean, no riots, no disturbances, nothing. So, I mean, it's very, interesting why people would get that upset and let a sporting event really, beat down their day that bad that they have to go set cars on fire and attack people and send 100 people to the hospital.
Yeah, nothing says I'm happy or I'm sad like flipping over someone else's car.
Yes.
Now, what's good news, hockey, hockey had a lockout. nearly killed him. But I mean, as of late, people starting getting a lot more interested. We had the Olympics in February between America. America went to the finals, lost to Canada. A lot of people excited about hockey. Now this Game 7 of the Boston Bruins versus the Vancouver Canucks, it was the largest audience an NHL game in the USA has had since 1973. You being a hockey fan all your life, I kind of jumped on the bandwagon about 4 or 5 years ago. Do you see America finally starting to warm up to hockey?
I mean, I think hockey's definitely back on the upswing. I mean, you saw it last year in the Olympics with the big ratings for the U.S. and Canada, and you saw it this year again with the Stanley Cup Finals. And the last couple of years, the finals have had pretty good ratings. I kind of wish NBC would have lost television rights to ESPN, because ESPN would have marketed the Stars a lot better. But NBC does a pretty good job, so I mean, they're really trying to get hockey back out there. And I think over the next couple of years, it's going to continue to get more and more popular here in the United States.
Now, the big story with this series, we had Tim Thomas just playing out of his mind, standing on his head, as they say. He let up just incredible. He had 8 goals in 7 games. Think about that. That's a little bit more than 1 goal a game. Arnold on our first show said a team with a hot goaltender, they can ride him all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, and that's obviously what happened. Now, how impressive is that? Put that in perspective.
I mean, Tim Thomas put on probably one of the best goalie displays in the playoffs since J.S. Jaguar did it for the Ducks in 2003 and got them to a Game 7 but couldn't close the deal. Tim Thomas has always been a very good goaltender, and sometimes he has very good years. He won the Vezina Trophy 2 years ago, but then he last year fell into obscurity and just didn't play very well at all, and that's kind of how goalies can go unless you're like the elite goalie that's at the top for so long. This playoff run that they were on really cemented his legacy as one of the best goalies in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, winning the Conn Smythe, he might have won the Conn Smythe even in Vancouver for the series, because really no one from Vancouver stood out in the finals, and that really hurt them a lot in the series to begin with. Yeah. I mean, Tim Thomas really put on a show and really took Boston onto his back and brought that home a cup.
Yeah. Now, the other big story, well, and Roberto Luongo, he's going to mainly be remembered for how just awful he played in Boston.
Ugh.
But I mean, he had a good series. He had a few shutouts. Yeah, the first game won, and then they had I think it was a game.
And another game, Game 5.
Game 5, that's what it was. He had a very, very good series. However, something that didn't sit right with me. I mean, you just won a game. You won 1-0 off a fluke goal. How exactly do you call out the other goalie saying you could have stopped that shot? Especially when the next game you get pulled in the first period after you let in 3 goals. Is that just stupid of him to say?
They look pretty stupid now that they didn't win the cup, and so I mean, it probably wasn't the smartest thing to say. He was probably excited they were only a game away from winning the cup, and you know, he made a poor judgment and said something he probably shouldn't have, and you know, he's got to live with it. And now he gets criticism that he's that goalie that can't win the big one again.
Now, really quick before we wrap this up, past 6 years, Boston won a championship in the 4 major sports: football, basketball, baseball, hockey. Where do you rank Boston as far as America's sports cities?
I mean, it's got to be up towards the top. I mean, I don't really consider if a city doesn't have all 4 teams, I'm not giving it that national sports city title crap. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Boston's right there. You got to put New York in there, obviously, just because I mean of how many people. I think if you have to put Detroit up there because they've won the 2nd most titles in that amount of time, and you probably have to put Chicago in there because they've won a few titles. So I mean, it's definitely in the top 2 or 3 for sure.
All right. We're gonna take a quick break and come back and do Pat's piece. See you then. The other day, I was listening to Sports Talk Radio, and former commissioner of Major League Baseball, Fay Vincent, was talking about Mark Cuban owning a baseball team. Now, he tried to be diplomatic at first, but after minimal prodding, his claws came out. He went on a self-righteous rant about owners need to be gentlemen, play by the rules, and respect the authorities. He even went on to compare Mark Cuban to George Steinbrenner and say that Cuban is a real problem. Are you kidding me? When you have baseball owners who can't pay their players and others buying teams on credit, you're going to tell me that Mark Cuban is a problem? Fact, Cuban has money. Fact, Cuban is willing to spend that money. Fact, Cuban wouldn't let his team go through perpetual rebuilding just because he won't open up his wallet. Get over yourselves hidden way up in your ivory towers. Mark Cuban has done wonders for the Mavs. If you don't think Cuban would do nothing but good things for a team like the Cubs or the Dodgers, you're lying. This has been Scores, Goals, and Touchdowns from Mr. Pat. See you next week.